Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Pradeep from Mad Candy 3D. So in this an almost hour-long video, I'm going to provide you the necessary tools to experiment with cloth physics inside Blender, and hopefully by the end of this video, you will have created a beautiful set of curtains for your scenes. Before we move on, I'm going to give a quick shout out to my Stylized Kitchen course, which made this video possible. It's a very comprehensive guide to create beautiful scenes in Blender. I'll show you how to create this beautiful kitchen from scratch, starting from modeling all the way to compositing your final renders. I have made this course as beginner friendly as possible, so even a person with no experience in Blender can take this course and create such quality scenes in a matter of weeks. If you are interested in that, please check it out. The link is in the description. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. So in this video, I have covered a lot of cloth settings that will define the nature of your cloth that you're trying to simulate. So in case if you don't want to get confused in the middle way, I suggest you to watch this entire video once without actually opening Blender, and then try to follow along the next time to get the most out of this video. So yeah, let's get started. All right, let's start by doing a simple cloth simulation to get to know what cloth physics is all about. So let's start by adding a plane. Shift A, go to mesh, let's add a plane. Now go to the physics tab over here. So the dot with a little circle around it. So let's go ahead and enable the cloth properties to this plane. So we also need a timeline here. So let me just bring a timeline. Now let's go ahead and play the animation to run the simulation. So as expected, our cloth is perpetually falling down. So let me reset the timeline by clicking this over here, or you can use shift left arrow or right arrow to jump to the start or end of the timeline. So I'll be using the shortcut. Okay, why the cloth is actually falling down? That's because for a cloth simulation to work properly, it needs two most important things. It either need a collision object to interact with or a pin group to keep it hanging in the air. So for our case, let's add a pin group first. So tab into edit mode. Whenever you are working with cloth simulations, it's important to have more geometry. So this helps in creating more detailed, elegant, and realistic looking cloth behavior. So let's right click and subdivide the plane. And let's go to the operator panel down here, and let's increase the number of cuts to 20. So if you wish to have more realistic and detailed cloth simulation, then increase the count to 30 or 40 or even 50 if you think your computer can handle it. Now we have enough geometry. We need to create a vertex group now. So let's go ahead and hold your Alt key and click over here to select the top line of vertices. And now let's head over to the object data properties, and let's create a new vertex group and click assign to assign these vertices to these vertex group. Now I would like to rename this, so double click on it, and I'm just going to call this pin group. Click enter to confirm. Now press tab to switch to object mode. Now let's head over to the physics tab and scroll down, and you can see under the shape menu, so there is an option called pin group. So you can go ahead and choose the vertex group that we just created. Now let's go ahead and run the simulation. So as you can see, this is working just fine. So the pin group is actually pinning the geometry from falling down perpetually. So yeah, now I would like to also show you how a collision object works. So let me get a monkey. Let's press Shift A, go to mesh. Let's add a Suzanne monkey. I'm just gonna scale this down simply and bring this down and move this out. Let's add a subdivision to this. Right click, shade smooth, and head over to the physics tab, and let's add a collision property to the monkey. Now let's reset the timeline, and let's hit the simulation one more time, and you can see our cloth object is actually interacting with the monkey. Let me just move this a little further so that we can see it a little bit more clearly. Let's also grab these two and move them above the floor. Yeah, now let's go ahead and run the simulation. You can see our cloth is perfectly interacting with the monkey. So right now this is a little bit jagged, so we can press Ctrl 2 to add 2 levels of subdivision on top of the cloth simulation, and right click and shade smooth. This will add a really nice and smooth look to the cloth. Okay, yeah, so there is a really important thing with the subdivision and the cloth modifier, which is the order of these modifiers. So you should always have the subdivision under the cloth. Why it's really important? When the subdivision is above the cloth modifier, Blender adds extra geometry before the simulation, which makes the viewport lag due to increased number of vertices the cloth simulation has to calculate. So this can slow down the viewport and affect the performance significantly. So let me show you. I'm just going to move the subdivision above the cloth, and let's reset the simulation, and let's hit the simulation one more time. So I can see it's kind of getting laggy because of all these new geometry that is the subdivision is generating right now. So that's why we should always keep the subdivision below the cloth modifier. Let me just drag this down. So by keeping the subdivision below the cloth modifier, the cloth simulation is calculated on a simpler low poly mesh first, and then the subdivision is applied afterwards, resulting in a smooth, detailed look without the unnecessary computational load. So this is how we can set up a simple cloth simulation. Okay, now before starting to simulate the curtains, let's go over some of the important cloth physics settings, because it is pretty hard to get consistent results without actually knowing what all these settings do. I mean, at least some of these settings, we don't actually need all of these settings to create a cloth simulation. Most of the settings works perfectly fine in its default state. We will go through some of these settings to see how we can get control over the cloth simulation. Okay, now let's see that. Okay, there are some important settings in the cloth physics tab that you should know about that decides what type of cloth is simulated and how it is being simulated. That includes vertex mass, air viscosity, bending, shrinking factor, and self-collision. So let's see what all these settings do one by one, and let's start with the vertex mass. Okay, so the vertex mass is situated here under the physical properties. So I have three different cloths here which uses the same settings except for the vertex mass, as you can see on top of each cloth here. So let me go ahead and play the simulation. So you can see the difference between each of these cloth. So the first one seems to be lighter and the last one seems to be heavier than both of these. So what's happening here? So think of vertex mass as a weight of the cloth. Each vertex in your mesh represents a point on the fabric, and its mass determines how heavy the cloth actually feels. So the higher the vertex mass, so in our case it is 5, so the more the cloth will get pulled down, and it will feel a little bit more stretchy, and it will also be a little bit more hard to get control of it. As you can see, it actually, the frame is right now at 240, and you can see this came to a resting point, but this still seem to be dangling around. So the lower value will makes it feel lighter and a little bit more floaty. So this is especially important when simulating different type of materials like silk versus denim. While silk tend to show a little resistance, and the denim, or in terms of or leather or rubber, they show a little bit more elasticity and a little bit more resistance. So yeah, this is how vertex mass functions. So now let's move on to the next settings, which is air viscosity. The air viscosity, it actually controls how much resistance the cloth experiences when moving through the air. So imagine there is a little bit of an atmosphere in this viewport right now, and imagine waving a light weight scarf versus waving a heavy blanket. Now let me go ahead and play the simulation here. By default, the viscosity is set to 1, and I have increased the viscosity for this second one to highest possible, which is 10. So as you can notice, the second one came to an end pretty quickly, while the first one is still dangling around, and that is because the air around in our viewport. So that's air viscosity in the action. So in Blender, increasing this value means the cloth seems a little bit more interactive with the air, slowing down with the movements. While you can see this is a little bit dangling around still. So increasing the air viscosity means the cloth will experience more resistance to the air, while decreasing it will result the cloth experiencing less resistance, therefore moving more freely and dynamically. So this is the key takeaway here. Now let's move on to the next one, which is bending. Okay, the bending controls the stiffness of the cloth, so how easily it folds or bends. So let me play the animation now. So each of this uses the same vertex mass, and all the other settings are also same except for the bending. So a higher value in bending seems to make the cloth a little more stiffer, meaning it will form larger folds like this. So the lower value will make the cloth more flexible, allowing it to create finer and tighter folds. So this settings is especially useful when you are simulating materials that needs to either drape softly or hold more structure like the curtains versus a piece of leather like this one with a bending value of 5. So yeah, so lower bending value creates more folds and higher bending value creates less folds. So that's what you need to remember about the bending. So now let's move on to the next one, which is the shrinking factor. Shrinking factor is a really important and interesting settings in the cloth physics. So the shrinking factor determines how much the cloth either shrinks or stretches. So let me go ahead and play the animation. While the shrinking factor is set to 0, it doesn't have any effect at all on our mesh plane. While it is set to 0.5, it kind of shrinks halfway. And while it is set to 1, it is kind of shrinking all the way and it gets crumbled. And while it's set to -1, it starts to do the opposite of shrinking, which is inflating. So if a shrinking value of 1 gets it completely shrunk down, minus value will tends to extend the mesh 2 times of its size. So let me play the animation now and let the cloth rest. Okay, so we have the measurement tool. So the plane is roughly 2.3 meters right now. And if we draw a straight line along this one, you can see it is roughly 4.8 meters. So it concludes that the mesh is actually extending up to twice its size when it's set to -1. So let me go to the physics tab here. So the shrinking factor is set under the shape. By default, you can only slide between 1, -1, and 0. But you can also go ahead and input some manual values like I did here, which is -2, which tend to expand the cloth twice the original size. So this is how the shrinking factor actually works. So you can also see it also uses the same vertex mass and bending value just so we can get consistent results across these guys. Okay, so yeah, that's shrinking factor for you. Now let's move on to the next setting, which is self-collision. So the self-collision prevents the cloth from passing through itself. Let me play the animation. Let me show you. So we can see the first mesh is actually intersecting within itself, and the second one is producing a little bit nicer and realistic results. So this option can slow down the simulation a little bit, but it's really essential if you want your cloth to behave in a physically accurate way, especially with complex shapes and tight folds. Cloth simulation tend to run into these type of overlapping quite often. So self-collision is pretty mandatory in my opinion, if you ask me. So yeah, so these are the settings that you need to keep in mind before actually doing a simulation. So that is also one thing you can look into, which is the presets that comes built in Blender. So I have baked all the simulation because these are quite heavy objects. So you can set up a preset by simply grab a subdivided plane, enable a cloth physics, and you can click over here, so which is the cloth presets, and choose from any of these 5 presets. And you can also create your own preset if you are using any setting quite often. So let me play the animation for you. So you can see by default, we will use the cotton or silk quite often. And you can also see all these properties are physically accurate. The cotton and the silk seem to produce a nicer folds, and the leather seems to retain the stiffness, while the denim has a little bit of air resistance and the rubber has its elasticity. And you can also see the cotton, it has a vertex mass of 0.3 and the silk has a vertex mass of 0.15. And when playing the animation, the silk actually gets to the resting point first, while the rubber has the highest vertex mass and it gets dangled around throughout the simulation. So in case if you are creating a cloth that falls under any of these settings, you can gladly go ahead and pop up one of these presets and make sure that you enable the self collision and you are good to go. So yeah, now let's go ahead and create our own curtain using our own settings with what we just learned. So yeah. Okay, folks, here we are in a new file with just the objects that we need to take into account to before creating the cloth simulation. So these wall lamps and the shelves here, to make sure that we are not actually overlapping these objects while creating the curtains. So let's go ahead and create a curtain rod first. For this, I would like to bring in a reference image. Shift A, go to image reference. So let's add this one here and let's scale this down just a bit and move this up. Let me enter the local space and let's start to model this one. So before that, I would like to rotate this in the y-axis for minus 90 degrees so that this is easy for us to model, because we are going to use a screw modifier to model this profile here. And this is pretty much a UV sphere. Place the 3D cursor roughly to the center of this object like this, and Shift A, go to mesh, let's add a UV sphere. Let's move this up and scale this down, and let's match this ball here. Okay, now let's add a single word. Shift A, go to mesh, let's add a single word. Okay, I'm gonna go to the object mode and move this reference a little back, and let's grab the single word, enter the edit mode, and let's press X to extrude this out. Let me just grab this, move this up just a touch over here, and now let's extrude this up in the z-axis, and let's extrude this up in the z-axis one more time, and let's match this point. Now let's press Ctrl R to add a vertex in the middle. Okay, now press G and X, move this out over here. Now press Ctrl Shift B to create a nice bevel. I'm just going to set the segments to 2. Okay, let's grab this, press G, X, move this out. Okay, let's grab these two and slide this in a little. Maybe this could use a little more subdivision. I'm just going to grab these two. Yeah, scale this up. Yeah, now this is looking perfect. Now let's grab this vertex, press E, Z, extrude this up. Now press E and X to extrude this out here. Now I'm just going to press E and let's extrude this all the way over here, and press Ctrl R to add a vertex. Now let's grab this and move this over here, and press Ctrl Shift B and give this a nice bevel like this to match the profile. Now let's grab this, EX to extrude this out, EZ to extrude this all the way up here, add a vertex in the middle, pull this out in the X, and press Ctrl Shift B to create a nice bevel. I'm just gonna grab these and move this out just a bit. Okay, now we could grab this one, EX, extrude this in all the way. Okay, now let's add a screw modifier. So the normals are flipped because we beveled the vertices. And under the normals option, let's go ahead and check calculate order. This will fix this issue. Okay, I'm quite happy with the profile. Let's add a bevel modifier and let's set the segments to 2 and set the profile shape to 1. Now press Ctrl 2 to add 2 levels of subdivision on top of this. Okay, we need to merge these vertices in the center. So let's go ahead and check the merge option in the screw modifier to fix that. Okay, these edges are getting picked up by the bevel modifier. So I'm just gonna increase this angle to 85, something like that, and it is fixed nicely. Now let's go ahead and apply the screw modifier, okay, which will give us this base. And now let's grab this. Let's press I to create an insert like this, and press E and extrude this down to create the rod. Okay, now tab out of edit mode. Let's join these together. Make the rod as an active object and press Ctrl J, and this will join them together. Right click, shade smooth, and let's hide this reference from the viewport. Yeah, this is looking nice. So we don't need this bottom face anymore because we are going to use a mirror modifier. So I'm just going to get rid of it. Okay, now let's enter the world space. Let's rotate this in the y-axis for 90 degrees. And I'm just going to move this roughly over here and scale this down to a reasonable proportion. Okay, let's place it over here and move this closer to the wall. Yeah, I'm just going to move this roughly over here. This should be fine. Okay, now let's add a mirror modifier and move the mirror modifier above all the modifiers. Let's enable the clipping option and let's choose our window frame as a mirror object. Okay, now tab into edit mode. Let's grab this edge here, press G and X and move this in the center. Now you can press Shift S and move the cursor to selector. Now right click and set the origin to 3D cursor. Now you can get rid of the mirror pivot. Now with that we have defined the origin of this object. We don't need this mirror anymore. But the mirror is actually not happening. That is because we have rotated this. So let's go ahead and press Ctrl A, apply the rotation. Now we need to create a small holder for this handle. So let me enter the edit mode. Let's disable the clipping for a moment so that we can create a duplicate of this and move this out. Now let's re-enable the clipping. Okay, I would like to move this roughly over here and press P and choose selection to make it into a separate object. Let's switch to the object mode and let's grab this ring, tab into edit mode, one for vertex mode, grab the half of this vertices and let's delete them. I'm just gonna grab this and press E and X to extrude this out at the x-axis like this. Okay, now let's go back and let's grab these two vertices, press E and Y, extrude this inside this wall like this. Now let's press Ctrl L to select the linked and press Alt E and choose extrude faces along normals. Let's drag the mouse down so that the extrusion is happening on the outside like this. Okay, that is a little bit of a problem here. So let's go ahead and check the offset even. This will fix this issue. Now we need to create a small plating to make it look like it is actually attached to the wall. So I'm just going to add a loop cut in the center, S, Y, 0 to make it flat. Press G, Y, move this closer to the wall. Now switch to face mode, grab these two faces, press Alt E and choose extrude faces along normals, and let's drag a mouse down. And let's give this a nice extrusion like this. So these two extrusion will act as a supportive edge loop to prevent these corner from exploding. So I'm just gonna check offset even, press Alt E, extrude faces along normals one more time, and extrude this around here. Now we could add a loop cut to support these edges a little bit more, and let's also even out the geometry in the middle as well, like this. Okay, this is looking fine, but I think we could make this a little bit more bigger. So I'm just gonna enter the edit mode, grab this face loop here, Alt E and choose as extrude faces along normals. So let's extrude this out to create that plating. Check offset even if you want a square profile, but I'm just gonna leave this as it is because I like this spherical one. Maybe we could add a loop cut in the center. Okay, I'm just gonna grab these outer edges. Okay, now right click, loop tools and circle. Okay, let's set the influence to something like 65. Yeah, I think this is looking good. Right click, shade smooth. Let's check the face orientation though. Yeah, this is flipped. So I'm just gonna grab this and shift N to fix that. This will recalculate the normals. Okay, this seems to be a little bit of a rotator, so I'm just gonna go ahead and rotate these two guys. So I'm just gonna rotate these. Yeah, looking good now. Okay, let's create the curtains now. So let's start by adding a plane. Press Shift A, go to Mesh, let's add a plane. So I'm just gonna apply some specific values to the plane because we're gonna have to stick with some strict values so that we can get pretty consistent results. So let's go ahead and set the dimensions in X and Y to 0.6 meters. And let's rotate this in the x-axis for 90 degrees, and let's apply the rotation and the scale. So this is roughly half the size of this curtain rod. So if I create a duplicate of this, you can see a little more than half. So yeah, this is what we are going to use. I'm just going to delete this duplicate here. We are going to use the shrinking factor, so this will do just fine. Now we need some subdivisions. So let's go ahead, enter the edit mode, right click. Let's subdivide this 20 times, maybe 25. Yeah, 25 seems good. Now let's go ahead and add a vertex group. So I'm just going to grab the top line of vertices, go to the object data properties. Let's create a new vertex group. I'm just going to call this pin groups. Let's click assign and let's check that. Yeah, it is assigned. Now let's go to the physics tab. Let's add a cloth property to that. And I'm just going to increase the quality steps to 10. So this is just a general cloth simulation quality. So the higher the number, the finer the cloth simulation will look like. So let's reset the timeline here. Yeah. Now I'm going to make the vertex mass a little bit higher because I want this cloth to feel a little bit rubbery and a little bit more stylized. So let's set this to 1.5. So because this is a stylized curtain, having a little bit weightage looks nice. So this is just a personal preference. So yeah, now we are not actually gonna touch the bending because we are gonna need a little bit folds. So 0.5 is a good value to have some nice folds. So now let's scroll down and you can see the pin group here. So let's choose our pin group and let's set the shrinking factor all the way to -1. And let's increase the collision quality, set this to 10, and let's also enable our self collision. So the distance represents the distance between the interaction between the cloth in itself. So this is a good value, but if you like, you could also go down even more to achieve even more realistic result. But remember, it will slow down your simulation. Okay, I guess we are pretty much set. So let's go ahead and run the simulation now. Yeah, this is looking good. And I think we could use some height here because I expect the curtain to hang around somewhere around here. So yeah, let's go ahead and reset the timeline and grab the plane, enter the edit mode, and let's grab these guys. Shift D, Z, bring it down. Let's over here. I'm just gonna enable the auto merge vertices and let's patch this up. Yeah, this is fixed. Now let's go to the object mode. Let's run the simulation one more time. Okay, I guess a little bit more. So let's go ahead and do that one more time. I guess now this will work just fine. Yeah, this is looking, okay. Let me add a subdivision surface on top of this. So because we set the shrinking factor all the way to -1 and we also increased the vertex mass, the cloth is actually dangling around a lot. So why don't we just increase the air viscosity to control that? So let's set this all the way to 10 and let's run the simulation one more time. Now you can see it come to a resting point pretty quickly. So this is what I want. Looking good. Right click, shade smooth. Okay, let's reset the simulation. Let's move the cloth a little to the front here. Yeah, this will do good. Okay, there isn't any overlapping with the background objects. Now we need to create an object that will in turn interact with our cloth object and help us pin these cloths to the walls. So I'm just gonna create a U-shaped object to do that. So let's start by adding a path curve. Let's reset the timeline. Shift A, go to curve, let's add a path. Let's enter the local space and let's tab into edit mode. Let's grab these two vertices here, press G, Y, move them out, and let's scale them in like this. Now let's go ahead and grab these two, right click, subdivide, and let's move this vertex out a little bit more. So this is what we need, a U-shaped object to control the cloth. Looking good. Now we need to add a profile for this, but I don't want a cylindrical profile. So I'm just going to bring in a rectangular curve. So let's set the curve to 3D and let's set the curve output type to poly. So this is what we need. Now let's press tab to enter the object mode. Now let's grab our path curve, go to the object data properties of the curves here under the geometry and switch the bevel mode to object. And let's choose our newly created rectangular curve to act as a profile. So this is obviously very, very big. So I'm just going to grab the rectangle here, tab into edit mode, and let's scale this down. So right now this is looking like a square. I want this to be a bit more of a rectangular profile so that it will look like a strap. So let's go ahead and scale this in the X. Now you can see it is looking like a strap. I think this is fine. In case if we don't like it, we can always come back and change it later. So this is also going to be useful to create a strap. So I'm just going to press Shift D to create a duplicate of this and hide this from the viewport. Maybe let's rename this to strap so that it won't get lost. Okay, now let's grab the object here. Okay, I think this is a little bigger, so I'm just gonna scale this down a little bit more like this. Yeah, this is the perfect size. Now press forward slash to enter the world space. I think this is a lot bigger, so I'm just gonna scale this down to a reasonable proportion. Press R, Z, minus 90. Okay, let me just scale this up in the Z axis a little bit, like this. Yeah, this will do good. I guess a little bit more thickness can be good. It seems a little too thin, so I'm just gonna press okay, yes, and X to add some thickness, maybe. Yeah. Now let's go ahead and select the curve, right click and convert to mesh. Now press Ctrl to add two levels of subdivision, so this is nice and smooth. Let's add a loop cut that is running in the middle so that it retains a little bit of a square shape. Let's also add one more in the center as well. Okay, this is a very simple mesh right now. So we're gonna add a collision property to this. So let's go to the physics tab, add a collision property. Okay, make sure that it is perfectly aligned with our plane. So let me enter the local space here and press F3 and choose align objects and align both in the y-axis. Okay, looking good. Now let's play the simulation. I guess the cloth came to a resting position right at frame 77. So while our collision object is selected, press G, Z, bring it down like this around here and give this a nice rotation. And press I to mark a keyframe. Now let's move our frame slider to somewhere like frame 120. Now let's move our collision object to somewhere here. So this will act as a pinning element. So once you have moved the collision object, you can go ahead and press I to finalize the animation. Now let's go ahead and reset the timeline and play the animation one more time. Yeah, let it run all the way to 250. Yeah, this is cached now, and you can see the simulation is looking perfect. Okay guys, a quick intervention here. When you try to simulate your cloth, you might encounter some problem. Your blender might freeze or it might crash depending upon the computational power that you have. So I have created a scenario that pushes the limit of my computer. So for instance, here I have a really high fidelity cloth object and a collision object here. So let me just grab this and tab into edit mode, and you can see this is a really dense mesh. So it has about 30,000 faces, and with the subdivision surface modifier with level 2, this has about 495k faces here. So this is a really dense cloth object. So let me show you what happens when I try to simulate this. So I have absolutely laggy feedback. I am actually getting 1 FPS here. So this is not actually a really good thing. Some of you might experience crash. So you can actually bake your simulations to escape this one. So you can go to the cloth simulation settings and you can scroll down under the cache option. You can see here. So I have set my simulation length about 1 to 120 frames. So I have also included the same value in here as well, 1 to 120. By default, it is set to 1 to 250, but if your scene requires, you could actually increase or decrease the end frame as well. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and hit the bake option here, and this will bake the simulation for us, and this will give us the pre-rendered simulation once the baking process has been done. This might take a couple of minutes or a couple of hours depending upon the power of your computer. So you're gonna have to wait until the simulation run down. So you can see there is a blue bar down here that is being increased, and that is the cache memory. Okay, the baking process is done. So this took me about 5 to 6 minutes to bake down the entire simulation. And I have a RTX 3060 Ti just for your reference. So you might experience a little less or more time depending upon your computer. So now let me go ahead and play the simulation for you. So now we have a really nice and smooth feedback because of the already baked down simulation. So this is how you can bake down your simulations. So yeah, now let's get back to our curtain simulation. Now we need to create another one. So we had to do the same. So I'm just going to grab this and press Ctrl C, and let's reset the timeline and press Ctrl V to paste this. Press G and Y and move this slightly in the Y axis, because when we try to simulate both of these two are collision objects, so both of this collision will interact with both of these cloth objects, so we're gonna have to keep a little distance. Now we need to redo the animation for this one, or if you don't want to do this, you could just go ahead and apply it as a shape key or a cloth object, and you could throw in a mirror modifier to deal with that. But I'm just gonna show you how to do that as well in a while. So I'm just going to grab this one here. Let's delete the keyframes. Okay, now let's grab both of these and move them out in the X like this. So remember, this is actually half the size of our curtain rod. So I guess this is pretty much aligned, maybe a little bit more like this. Yeah, this will do. Now let's enter the local space one more time. And let's rotate this in the z-axis for 180 degrees. And let me just move this over here. Yeah, roughly around here. Let me slide this through, and at frame 77, press I to create a keyframe. And let's move this to frame 120. So let me just grab this, press G, and move this roughly over here. And press I to confirm the animation. Now let's go ahead and play the simulation. We have a little bit of a overlapping with this one, but we can fix it pretty nicely with some manual adjustments. Yeah, now the simulation is baked like nicely. I guess both of these simulation is looking good. Now I would like to grab both of these and these guys as well. Press Ctrl C to make a copy of them, and press Ctrl V to paste them in the same file. I'm just going to create a cloth backup file. We can use it later. Let me hide this from the viewport. And now let's grab this curtain here. Press Ctrl C to copy just this, and go to the Modifiers tab. Let's apply this as a shape key. Now let's grab this one. Let's go to the Modifier tab, and let's apply this as a shape key as well. Now we don't need this anymore, so I'm just going to grab these two and delete this. Now if you go to the object data properties, and you can see there is a shape key called cloth, you can select that and you can increase the value all the way to 1 to retain the cloth shape. Let's do the same for this one as well. Okay, now let's create the valance. So for this, we copied the cloth, right? This one. So press Ctrl V to paste it. And let's go back with the timeline. And I'm just going to resize it a little bit. So let's grab this, tab into edit mode. I'm just gonna cut this down to a quarter of the size. X, delete vertices, and let's grab this, Shift D, X, move this out, and let's stitch this up. Yeah, looking good. Now I'm just going to cut down like these two vertices here, two sets of faces, X and faces, and let's grab all the top vertices and assign them to the pin group. Now let's move this over here, and let's also grab this curtain and move this to the position. Okay, make sure both of these are lined perfectly. And I'm just going to add a collision property for both of these curtains. So let's go ahead and add them as well. Okay, now let's grab this, press G, Y, move them closer, right click, set origin to geometry. Okay, so it's looking all right. I'm just going to move this little up here. Let me slide this through. Yeah, looking good. Maybe we could cut down just these two sets of vertices. Okay, now everything's set. So let's go ahead and run the simulation. Okay, the simulation is fine. We are not actually experiencing any type of overlapping, but I feel like the Valance is kind of thrown off a little too much. So let me reset the timeline, and let's grab these curtains and bring them down just a bit. For the moment, we will actually uh, move them up afterwards, because this area is actually, this curvature here is actually affecting as a again as a collision factor, and kind of making the Valance throw up a little more than what we need. So now that we have moved it a little back, a little down, now let's run the simulation one more time. Okay, maybe let me just try a little more. Yeah, let's run the simulation. Yeah, I think it is much better now. So let's run the simulation all the way. Okay, looking good. Now I'm just gonna scrub through the timeline and let's see. Yeah, we are looking good. Now let's grab these two and press G, Z, move them out. Now we are experiencing a little bit of a overlapping, but I'm sure we can easily fix them manually. Okay, let me just drop them down just a bit. Yeah, this is fine. Now let's grab the Valance. Let's go to the modifiers tab. And before applying the modifier, I'm gonna back up this one as well. So press Shift D to create a duplicate of this. I'm just gonna move this to our cloth sim backup. Now let's apply this as a shape key, and let's go to the object data properties, and let's choose the cloth, and let's increase the value all the way to 1. Now I'm just gonna grab this one here, tab into edit mode. Let's grab these vertices, press G, Y, move them back like this. Now let's grab this one and this one. Just gonna move this back as well. Okay, now it's fixed. Yeah, looking good. So now we're gonna have to create the strap that is actually gonna tie this curtain up to the wall. To make our work a little easier, I'm just going to grab this one. I'm just gonna move this back to the cloth sim backup. I'm gonna mirror this one so that we can actually mirror the strap as well. So let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier onto this. But if you feel like it, you could also manually map the strap as well. So it's up to you. Now I'm just gonna move the mirror bow here, and let's choose our curtain rod as a mirror object. And you can see the mirror object is too close, so it is actually merging. So we can just go ahead and uncheck the merge option. Okay, now we're gonna have to do a little bit of editing. So let's grab this, tab into edit mode. Let's grab these two here and press G, Y, move them back. And for a change, let's grab the Valance, and let's grab these three vertices. Press G, Y, move them back as well, move them front, and let's edit this one here. I'm just gonna grab these set of vertices and press G, Y, move them front. I'm just gonna scroll up a little bit. Okay, let's stop right here. Just gonna rotate this in the X a little bit like this. Yeah, much better. Now, if you like, you could also try to wrap this valance around the curtain as well. So let me fix this overlapping. So I'm just gonna grab this one. Let's grab these two vertices, press G, Y, move them out like this. Now let's check this area. Just gonna grab these two, press G, Y, move them out as well. Yeah, I think we could move this out a little bit more like this. Or you can simply leave it because it's not gonna be visible so much. So I'm gonna grab this one, turn off the proportional editing, press G, Y, move it back, just a touch. Now I'm just gonna grab all these edges in the top, go to the side view by pressing 3 on your numpad, and press E and extrude them out and wrap it around this curtain rod like this. Press E to extrude like this. Now let's go to the top view, let's see. I think it's looking good, but we could actually have a little bit of a curvature here. So I'm just gonna go to the edge mode, grab this edge, G twice to slide it, and press G, Z to move them up like this. Okay, let's fix this one here. G, Y. I think it's looking fine. Yeah, looking good. Yeah, it seems like this is actually a little bit overlapping here. So I'm just gonna grab this, move it out like this. Yeah. Now let's go ahead and let's unhide our strap object. Let's scale this down and apply the scale. Let's rotate this in the z-axis for minus 90 degrees. And I guess we could scale this up a little bit in terms of the profile. So I'm just gonna grab the profile curve here and press S and X to scale them out a little bit to give it some thickness. Now press S and Y to scale them up to give it some height like this. I think this is enough, maybe a little bit more. Okay, this seems good. Now I'm just gonna grab this and press G and let's move this over here. Give this a little rotation like this. And now we gotta have to manually make the strap wrap around the curtain. Okay, let's bring it a little bit over here in the y-axis. Yeah, now it's much better. Okay, the next step would be I'm just gonna grab these two here and add a subdivision so that we can actually grab this two vertices and make it touching the wall like this. Maybe one more vertex over here and press G, Y, move it out. Yeah, looking good. Now this one, let's grab these two here, add a subdivision, and let's grab this two here, press G, Y, move it closer to the wall, make it touch the strap there. And I'm just gonna grab this and move it out like this to give it some length. And we could add a subdivision here. And let's press G, Shift Z and move it out like this. And now we can move this around using Shift Z. And I would like to move this around as well and make it actually touch the cloth a little bit. So now you can see the bottom portion is actually touching the cloth. So now the plausible thing to do is tilt the strap a little bit. And you can't actually rotate the curve points using R. And there is another option called Control T, which will allow us to tilt our curve objects like this. Now we can press G, Shift Z, move it out. Let's tilt this a little bit more. Yeah, now this is all right. Okay, now let's fix this one. Press G, Shift Z, move this closer. Gonna take a look from the side. Yeah, we could have a little bit of a uniformity here. This seems a little bit jagged, so I'm just gonna grab this and move this up a little bit, and I'm just gonna try to align these vertices in a single line so that it looks a little bit more elegant. Yeah, now it's looking great. Maybe we could pull this out a little bit more. Yeah, much better. So right now this is actually a little sharp, perfectly sharp. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add a bevel modifier on top of this. to round off these edges. Set the segments to 2 and let's leave the profile as 0.5. You can also add a subdivision modifier on top of this to make it nice and smooth. Yeah, now it is looking much better. I think we could grab this and move this out a little bit more. And let's grab this one, press G, why move it out as well. Let's apply the scale, and yeah, I think it's fine. Okay, let's reduce the bevel amount a little bit because you can see it is actually clamping in the middle. If I press Shift Z, you can see, yeah, these two edges. So I'm just gonna go ahead and reduce the bevel amount a little bit to ease of these. Yeah, now much better. The bevel value is 0.004. Yeah, this is looking nice. You could actually grab one of the nails that we created earlier to pin this nicely. We don't have this right now, but I will do it later in the video. So that is a little bit of overlapping here. So I'm just going to grab this, press Y, move it out. Okay, anything that is behind the curtain, it's not our problem. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. And let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier to this and move this above all these modifiers. Let's choose our curtain rod as a mirror object. Now this is perfectly fine. And if you feel like this is a little too symmetrical for you, you can just go ahead and apply the mirror modifier for the curtain and move around some of these. Or you could simply use the curtain that we simulated before, and you could manually wrap around these straps. So just for the straps, I decided to keep the curtain symmetrical because it would take a lot of time to wrap around two of these. So it would be a little tedious to show you guys. So that's why I did that. Also, the curtain's length is a little bit long right now. So once we surround these kitchen countertop with all these objects, it might get overlapped with other objects as well. So in that case, you could simply grab the curtain and let's select the space loop, press X and choose spaces to delete it to cut off these, and it won't really make any difference and it would still look like a beautiful curtain. So yeah, I'm just going to leave this as it is right now and we will deal with it later. And I guess everything's looking great. So far, so good. Okay, guys, that is one more tip before closing this video. So if you feel like this is a little bit too jagged or too rugged, you can do one thing. Tap into edit mode and press A to select everything. And go ahead and select the smooth tool and grab this yellow gizmo and drag your mouse to the right. And this will essentially smooth out the entire mesh, and therefore you could get a really nice and smooth looking cloth like this. Okay, let me press Ctrl Z and go back a couple of steps, and I'm just gonna turn off the overlays and let's see the difference between before and after. Before and after. So I will most likely choose this smoothed out version for our scene, but I'm gonna leave the choice to you guys. So you can choose either the rugged or smooth looking cloth. So that's it for this chapter. I hope you have learned something new and got a really good understanding of the cloth simulation and its settings, and I hope this will help you in your future simulations as well. So let's wrap up this chapter right here, and I'll see you on the next one.